Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back. It is Wednesday, time for another real estate and mortgage live with Josh Lewis, mortgage professional here in Huntington Beach, along with myself, also not really on the mortgage side, on the real estate side. So, as many of you guys know, we're here every Wednesday answering your questions. So the way this works, if you're interested, have a question in the housing market, mortgage related topic, put it in the comments below. We'll do our best to get to it. Josh, welcome to the show this week. How are you, my friend? We have no sound from you. Your headset, you're going to have to go off, aren't you?
Muted me. You muted
There.
me. You did it on purpose. You muted
Sucker.
me. You tricked me. You asked me a question while you had me on mute.
Anyway, welcome back. Hope so. Josh had surgery a couple weeks ago, as you guys know. He's back, feeling a little bit better. So maybe he'll bring some better answers this week. We got people watching from Arizona, the Bay Area, New Jersey, all over the place. So, if you guys are watching, let us know where you're watching from. Let us know again. I like that scale that we've used in the past, 1 to 10. How hot is your housing market at the moment? If you're out there in it, let us know. And, Josh, I was telling you before this, just to start with kind of a weird fact out there, I saw today in the state of Arizona, actually, it was on Instagram, came from Lizzie Hofer. And she had put on her IG that they are now, if you get a judgment in the state of Arizona, you have debt that is unpaid, it gets a judgment, they can attach it to your house. And so it would come out of the equity of your property when you go to sell or refinance. So the moral of the story there, I think, is to pay your bills.
Pay your bills. Yeah, pay your bills. You have nothing to. It's always a mirror or a window into someone's soul, how upset they get about news like that. If they're just terribly offended that someone could attach one of their assets for the bill that they failed to pay, then it tells you a little bit about. It tells you not to loan that person money.
Enough said. And as I know, many of you guys watch, you have questions about interest rates. We're going to talk about interest rates tonight. We're actually going to talk in a little bit more detail about rates tonight. We're going to wait probably about halfway through the show and talk about them. Give you a place that you can go to kind of check your rate versus what you're being offered, to feel like if you're getting a competitive rate, and it doesn't matter if it's conventional, FHA or VA. Josh is going to give us some insight on that, but we're going to get into that a little bit later. But let's start questions. So we got them coming. Jen, thank you for always being here. Jennifer Lego, one of our chat moderators. So say hello to Jennifer, but she's going to be in the chat helping us get through this tonight. But we got a question here coming in, and this is something that we discussed actually on, I don't know if it was last week or a week or so ago, about pools, value increase. You're actually considering adding a pool to your house. We've talked about pools are one of those things that they do add value, but it's considerably less than what it costs to actually put a pool in. I've always kind of ran under the number that, a pool probably adds maybe $25,000 worth of value to a property. Now that's here in Southern California. Depending on where you are, that number might be a bit different, but your average pool here locally probably cost about $60,000, $75,000 to put in, give or take. And you might get a third of that back in appraised value. But the one thing, and you had kind of, I think, fell out of the conversation last week, Josh, when we talked about this, because we had some sort of technical issue. But, the one thing I saw during the pandemic is that people fled to homes that had pools. So during that time, pool homes were kind of outliers, if you will. Everybody went to them because people were locked in their houses. They were stuck at home. They needed something to do. And so a pool was kind of, one of those opportunities to get out of the house and have some fun, if you will. So pool homes during that time were really, really in high demand, whereas in the past, they haven't been so much. So what are your thoughts? I mean, you're going through this yourself. What did you consider when adding the pool? I know it's kind of a personal thing.
You're never getting the money out of it. So make sure you're going to be there a long time, and make sure that it's going to add value to you in terms of enjoyment. And we're lucky here in Southern California. We really have June, July, August, September, October, or probably full pool months. If you're Inland Empire, it's warmer out there. It's probably even longer than that. an example or thing I would like to point out, we look at a lot of appraisals, and when we see pool homes, people don't realize exactly how appraisals are done. The appraiser has to pick similar comps, and then they make adjustments for what's dissimilar between the subject property and the comparable sales. So when we have a pool, you can start looking and saying, how do appraisers value them? Now, in simple terms, if you have like a 1960s pool, little kidney-shaped pool with the plain blue tile and a concrete pool deck, maybe $10,000 to $15,000 added value is what you're going to get on an appraisal. So Jeb's probably dead on in terms of market value. The market's going to value it more than that, but appraisers can give us about $10,000 to $15,000 plus or minus if you have or don't have it. Now, let's say you did a pool 5 years ago and it's got a volcano and a lazy river and all that stuff going through it. You're going to see
volcano.
you're going to see about a $25,000 to $30,000 increase. So again, it's not how the market values it, but it's the way appraisers, they generally undervalue your improvements a little bit to what the market will do, and a ton relative to what they actually cost. I was watching an HGTV show yesterday, and they just threw up a statistic. According to the NAR, National Association of Realtors, a kitchen will get you 60% of the cost back. And you're looking at a kitchen is a very usable, valuable thing. So Jeb, kind of the best way I could look at it is, we had some insights into this. Steve and Jenna, some long-term clients of both of ours here, they looked about this time last year, right before everything got crazy with the pandemic actually, and said, hey, we'd like a pool. So they got a bid, and they got a really aggressive bid. It was a big 80 grand to do the pool, which generally, I have 2, 3, 4 clients that have done it in the last few years. Said, as soon as you dig the hole in the backyard, it's $100,000. That's Southern California. Contractors are busy. 100,000, and that's almost dead on what ours looks like before you get into the extras and the cool bells and whistles. But for them, they had it at 100. So let's look at it this way, Jeb. What did you sell their house for? It was like $1,010,000, something like that.
No, there's just over 900, but they ended up purchasing something just over $1 million.
So the thing just over $1 million already had the pool, right, and it was a nicer neighborhood. So without the pool, that home would have sold for more. So they upgraded the home and they got the pool. If they had been in their home and they put that $80,000 pool in, maybe they get half of it. Probably not, probably 30,000. So instead of 910, 915, whatever you guys got for it, they would have got 950. So, I mean, your best case whatsoever is probably 50% of the money back out. So make sure you're going to be there long enough. And really, that's almost true with any home improvement. Unless you go pure bargain basement, like just Home Depot quality tile and cabinets and all that stuff, you can get, so like when I flipped homes, we could do a kitchen for $15,000 to $20,000, and it would add $15,000 value to the home because we were getting really the most bang for the buck. Well, what happens as a homeowner, when you go to do that kitchen, you're going to go really nice and high end, and you get better appliances and a cooler countertop and an expensive backsplash. And the market really doesn't care whether you have that bare bones nice kitchen or the over the top bitchin' nice kitchen. Yes, you get more, but the nicer you go on any of your improvements, the less you're going to get back for it. And because a home does not need a pool, that's why you get the least out of almost all improvements that you could do to your home, because a lot of the market gives it zero value or even sometimes negative value. If they don't want to maintain it, they have pets or kids that they don't want falling in it, or they just hate pools.
No, absolutely. So the long way of getting around, to you're not going to get your money back out of it, but if it's something that you're going to be there, you're going to enjoy, go for it. All right. Dahanan J. Do you think California will extend, I'm assuming longer, more, basically, are they going to extend the moratoriums, you think? So right now, California, or the federal ban on evictions is set to the end at the end of June. So what, 3 weeks from now? A little less than, well, yeah, about 3 weeks from now, actually. The moratorium is set to expire with regards to evictions. I could see it being extended. There's no talks of it at the moment. Now, some states do have longer extensions in place already. I think California may have one. I haven't really been following it lately, but I think maybe until September-ish potentially. But other states have, are already trying to, get rid of the moratorium that's in place now. I mean, it went to an appeals court, I think about a week ago, and they turned it down. So it basically stayed in place until the end of June. At this point, I can't see anything really changing on that front unless the CDC tries to extend it. Any insight there, Josh?
Well, let's just look at why. Why would they extend it? Why did they extend it all throughout last year? Because they initially did it. Was it 90 days or 6 months when they initially rolled it out? It was like it was.
Ooh, wow, it's been a long time. I think initially it was maybe till September of last year.
So it was about 6 months. Okay. And why did they do that? So we have no certainty. We're like, hey, we've got this thing coming. It's going to impact some people. We certainly don't want to displace people from their homes. So we're just going to tell lenders, hey, cool it. You got to cooperate, offer forbearance. We had the CARES Act within a month, said you have to offer forbearance. You can't foreclose on them, and you have to offer forbearance. So now we're a little over a year beyond that. We are, how many days, Jeb? 7 days, 5 days away from full reopening here in California, the craziest liberalist state in the union. So if we're opening, let's just say the United States is open for business. Doesn't mean we're completely back to normal, but someone who was gainfully employed, we saw job numbers last week. The job openings numbers this week. So we had 500,000 new jobs created last month. We have a record number of job openings. So homeowners who want to work can work now. You can get a job. So we had to extend last year because homeowners who, through no fault of their own, through the pandemic, could not work. So they couldn't make money. So you say, lenders, you're the bigger pockets in this. You're going to bear the brunt of it, of not being able to foreclose and having to offer forbearance. So we went from 5 million households roughly at the peak in forbearance. We're down to about 2.5 million. During that time frame, if you went the entire year and didn't make any payments, you still have more equity than you had last year. So now we get to the point where the pandemic isn't the problem. The problem is that you're unemployable. So, or at least unemployable to the degree that you can make enough money to support the mortgage that you had previously. So now we're getting to the point where it's reasonable that a lender should be able to protect their interest and work with the owners of the homes to either, they're not going to foreclose. We will have very few foreclosures out of this because of the rapid increase in home values over the last year. What you're going to have is forced sales. People where, hey, all of we're at the end of the line. There's nothing else we can do if you can't make those payments. And including, we've seen a number of clients that did forbearance. And on the other side of it, it was as simple as, hey, we're ready to start making payments. And all of them, if not nearly all of them, basically what they did is they took the arrearages and they just put a separate balance, a little sidecar over here. So you owe $500,000 on your house. We have another $20,000 balance, and I don't think I've even seen a lender charging interest on it. It's like a free interest-free loan for the payments you didn't make last year. So if you could make your payment last year and now we're past it and you should be able to work, you should be able to make the payments now. Long way of saying there is no reason for there to be any extended moratoriums at this point. If you can't make your payment, we need to start talking about what are the options for you to sell the home and make the lender whole.
Well, I think we're talking about two different things here, Josh. You're talking about more of forbearance and foreclosure eviction type stuff, or on that side, I'm more talking about, I don't even actually know if they were talking about rental evictions in this. I was talking about more of the rental eviction side, just because I guess more of what I've been reading is that there's a lot of this rental relief money that's out there that's been allotted for renters and for, landlords and what have you. And what I've read is it just hasn't made its way to these people yet. So while the money is there, these people still don't have their hands on it and haven't been in a position to take the money and repay their landlord. And the landlord hasn't had the opportunity to receive the money. And what I've read is there's a potential that they could actually extend that eviction moratorium to give people more time to actually get the money in their hands to prevent these evictions and what have you. So what you said is absolutely true on the forbearance front and foreclosure front, but I don't know at this point, because they've tied the evictions and the foreclosure moratorium together more or less this entire time. If they do extend one, do they extend the other at that time, forbearance aside? So it's hard to say, right? I mean, we're going to know really soon because they have to make a decision. They can't do it 3 days prior, right? I mean, they've got to give people a little bit of headway, I would think, with this sort of thing. So I would think, no later than next week, you would, if they were going to extend it, you would probably start to hear something about that. But
and just closing the loop on the lender side there also, it's not a matter of just being cold and heartless. The CFPB is all over these servicers. The servicers were woefully unprepared for the forbearance. There were so few loans in default that their loss mitigation departments were just horrifically understaffed. So they've done a fairly bad job of keeping up with the volume of inquiries of people that need help. So there's just a lot of people who have kind of been in limbo. Now, on the good side of it, I have yet to see a lender be difficult to someone. They have bent over backwards to work and find a way to keep people in homes. So I don't think we're necessarily going to see the moratoriums extend a long ways, but I absolutely think that lenders are going to do everything they can to keep homeowners who are able to make payments in their homes. And that's not because they're charities or they're kind-hearted. It's because it leads to better outcomes for them. They lose less money by working with families and trying to keep them in their homes.
Got it. No, that's the good stuff. So Felipe Macias Jr. just got a house for $449 brand new this past month. I still haven't signed the actual paperwork. You think I should wait? My interest rate is 2.98 fixed for 30 years. So the way I'm reading this is that you think you're in contract on a house, but haven't signed the paperwork. I'm not sure. Or maybe you haven't signed the paperwork on the loan. Either way, it's important to get that done. So if you haven't signed the paperwork on the house, you need to confirm that, for one. Otherwise, you don't have a purchase agreement, a fully executed purchase agreement. And with regards to the loan side, depending on when you're closing, regardless of when you're closing, you need to get that paperwork into the lender so that they can do their thing. And Josh, I'll let you take the lead on this one too. Talking about
it takes a period of time to be able to process a loan, and depending on when you say you haven't signed the actual paperwork, if you don't sign our initial disclosures, we can't get a file into underwriting, because one of those things in there is the notice of intent to proceed. It's you saying, yes, I am intending to proceed with a loan with you, and without that, we can't even get an underwriting approval. You may simply just be asking about the interest rate lock. Maybe that's what we're talking about, but all of these things are important. You don't have to lock your rate to have your file in process and moving forward, but you absolutely need to sign your disclosures so that we can keep everything moving forward. So there's zero benefit in waiting to sign loan paperwork or your actual real estate paperwork. You need to do that as soon as possible.
All right. You heard it from the man himself. Jay Wynn, $10 super chat. Thank you, sir. Ma'am, not sure. Either way, appreciate it. For Josh and I, valuable information. Appreciate you being here. If you have a question, put it there. But thank you for the support either way. Let's go back up here. I did see a question from Logical Thinker. How much should a home buyer in OC of a single family home, $700K to $850, realistically be ready to bid above asking in order to win a property? It's a good question. Quite frankly, it's going to depend on the area that you're looking to purchase. What I've seen on average, and this is going to sound crazy to a lot of people, is around 50-ish thousand. And that's not just here in Huntington Beach. It's kind of all over. I'm seeing, that 50,000 number. Now it depends, right? I mean, is the property that you're looking at priced, with that 50,000 already built in, or is it priced, where the comparables, if you will, are supporting it based on sales from a month ago or 2 months ago or what have you, because the market is moving rather quickly. And the average home price, 50,000 on a $800,000 home is what, 6-7%, somewhere in that ballpark. So that seems crazy to a lot of people, especially those that are in lower price states, but that's what we're seeing locally. But have your agent look, right? Have your agent look at the average of where properties were listed to what they sold. How much higher in the area that you're looking did they go above that asking price? I mean, that's important to know, because it can give you a really good idea. I mean, the National Association of Realtors also puts out stats, as well as the California Association of Realtors, that shows you what's happening in California or in the U.S. as a whole. And it can show you in California, last month, 103% was the list price to sales price ratio. So a home on average sold 3% above where it was listed. That's on average. So you got to imagine some were 10%, some were 95% of that ask price. So just, if you're working with a knowledgeable professional, they should be able to give you a pretty good idea of the direction that the market's headed and more or less where you would need to be in order to be competitive. But again, people are doing crazy things.
Let's throw a little additional context into it.
Yep.
For the most part, buyers do not care about the price of the home. They care about their monthly payment. So let's say on that $750,000 home, Jeb's dead right, you get pushed up to $800. The additional $50,000 is going to cost you about $250 a month. No one likes paying an additional $250 a month, but it's a little bit easier to swallow than to think in terms of $50,000 more. And I always like to remind our buyers that are out looking at the market, the market dictates what a home is worth. The price that the home is listed for has zero to do with what the value of the home is. In a more typical market, agents are listing sort of, this is what I think we're going to get the home. Maybe they put it 10,000 low. Maybe they have a pushy seller that says, no, my house is gold plated. They want to put it 25,000 high, but they're pretty close to what they expect to sell that home for. For the most part, agents are shocked and surprised at what their listings are worth now. So they look and they go, okay, Jeb, you had the one 6 or 8 months ago. You're like, you know what? Based off of the comps, I think that thing should sell about 790. And you said, we're going to list at 799, 8-ish. And what'd you end up getting? Almost 900 for it?
Yeah. I mean, I have a good example now. I mean, I just listed one, right? I mean, in our market here, and it's in a higher price point. And when I was having a conversation with the client on the house, she asked me what I thought it was worth, and I gave her a range, and my numbers were lower than hers, by quite a bit. I mean, not quite a bit. I mean, over $100,000. How's that? And but I told her, I said, listen, people are doing things in this market that I haven't seen before, and I've been wrong before. I've told people that I didn't think homes would sell here, and they have. So at the end of the day, the seller picks the price, right? I'm there to try to get that price, to justify that price in any way possible. And we got 2 offers at the price that she wanted to list, within 3 days, one all cash. And we're talking big numbers here, people. And so, at the end of the
shockingly big numbers,
and shockingly people have cash, right? I mean, we talked about it last month, or in the last call, 25% of the sales in April were cash purchases. That's nuts. I mean, you would have asked me that, I would say maybe 10, 12%, maybe 25%. That's nuts. I mean, who's rolling around with, that type of cash? But clearly a lot of people are. So, but the moral of the story, talk to your agent. If you trust them, if they're knowledgeable, they should be able to give you an idea. But again, even then in this market, being a pro, they're not going to know exactly, because again, there's people out there doing things that we haven't seen before and that aren't necessarily justified.
Hey, Jeb, let's jump into this because it kind of follows the same
Yep.
trend there. So Judy's Workshop says, we put an offer, $365,000 on brand new construction, lost the bid, then got contacted by the seller. The deal with the other buyer fell through. They countered at $372,000, not sure what to do. That's $7,000 more. So again, at the end of the day, you have to determine, what's it worth to you? Is that reasonable? The seller probably knows, will they be able to get it to appraise for that? They have an idea on new construction, what they're being able to get through on appraisals. So I would bet they're not worried about getting an appraised value, and it's going to be good. And again, putting it into context, $7,000 is $35 a month. After the tax deduction, it's maybe $25 a month. So less than a family meal at a fast food restaurant per month. It's probably not worth losing a property over. When you look at, let's say at 12% annual appreciation, which we saw over the last 12 months, 1% a month, basically that's 2 months of appreciation, and the market value is there even if you overpaid for the property.
Agreed. And the reason they're likely countering to 372 is probably the buyer that backed out or fell out was the price that they were at. And so they're trying to get somebody to match that price. Now, if you're in a multiple offer situation, chances are if you don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. You just have to decide if it's the right house, right? And we're talking $7,000. Now, $7,000 isn't chump change, but at the end of the day, if it pushes you out from buying a property for another month or 2 months, you're going to end up paying at least that price in most cases anyway. So think of it like that. Good question here, Josh. I don't know if you're up to date on Fannie Freddie guidelines with regards to crypto. But this is definitely going to become a more common question over the next few years for sure. But the question Lydia is asking is, can cryptocurrency be used as reserves for the house purchase? And Josh is going to be able to answer it here. I'm thinking he's probably pulling up some guidelines here. But I do know that lenders at this point, Fannie, Freddie, I don't know if FHA and VA are allowing it, but I do know Fannie is allowing crypto. Now, I don't know if they are allowing it for reserves, but they are allowing it for, down payment as long as you can source where it came from. But do we need to come back?
Yeah, so let me dig into it here while you're answering the next question. Let me get the guidelines. The part that throws me there, you because say a year or two ago when Bitcoin was brand new and you had to have it on one of these weird wallets somewhere and no one knew exactly where it was and what to value it for. Now it's pretty easy. We can go online and every day Google, you just type in Bitcoin value and you see exactly what it is. So if you have some of the stranger, less common, I mean, there's hundreds of different cryptos out there. So it largely comes down to how easy it is to document the value of it and that you actually have the ownership of it. And the reserves piece is the interesting part there. So want to get you an accurate answer. So let's star that one and come back in a little bit.
All right, we'll come back on that one. Sorry, Leah. We'll hit you up here shortly. Give Josh an opportunity to read. So Jay Wynn also gave us a super chat earlier. Says Bay Area is hot, but told it's cooling off. Still didn't offer accepted at 255. Wow. So offered 255 over and wasn't able to get an offer accepted. Yeah, it's a crazy market. I talked about it in one of the market updates that I recently. People keep saying, hey, that the Bay Area is cooling, right? I see inventory. Yeah, but there's inventory there, but yet there is still a high buyer demand. We saw it. It was one of the hottest markets last month when they showed the San Francisco area with regards to the number of sales and the amount of appreciation. So don't get fooled just by seeing inventory thinking that the market's cooling per se, because there are still plenty of buyers waiting on the sidelines, getting in that housing market along with a lot of others. So, and you're basically proving it right there, with nearly $250,000 over the asking price.
And I would be super careful when you hear I've been told it's cooling off or we think it's cooling off. We've been seeing a lot of numbers. The media generally has no clue. And I truly mean that just about anything. The media has no clue. They want a headline that makes you tune in and go, really? Market's cooling off? What is it? So we get numbers every month, housing numbers. We get new home sales, existing home sales, and they consistently spin them incorrectly. So last month we had a miss on existing home sales. So not new construction, but homes that were already built, and it was low, and see the market's cooling off. Now, does that mean that there's less people wanting to buy those homes? Absolutely not. We had less sellers putting homes on the market, so there were less homes available to buy. So it's sort of like I look at when you're talking about sports, counting stats don't really matter. Rate stats are far more important. So the example is if you have a guy that gets 300 hits in a season playing baseball, you go, oh, he's great. He got 300 hits. This other guy only got 200 hits. But if the guy with 200 hits had half as many at bats, he had a higher batting average. That's why we look at batting average. So the media should be saying, hey, 92% of homes that came on the market in the last 30 days sold. That tells you it's a really hot market. They look and they go, less homes sold this month. The market's cooling. There's less demand. There's not less demand. There's less supply for the people out there demanding homes. And then also to remember, almost all these numbers are year-over-year figures. You'll see month-over-month, but month-over-month has seasonal issues. Less homes are sold in December than there are in May. So we really want to look at the year-over-year figures, and it's really hard to do right now because last year we were just now having people go, hey, maybe COVID's not going to be so bad and rates are really low and I want to buy houses. So it's a tough market to understand. And just remember, all the media wants to do is scare the shit out of you so that you watch the news, read the story, give them eyeballs so they can make advertising dollars. They're not there to educate you.
Well said. Janice Householder. If we bought land and put a mobile home on it over 30 years ago and now it's paid for, is there any way to qualify for a first-time zero down payment home loan? Yeah. You could do USDA depending on where you're located, right? USDA is really the only loan out there that truly allows you to not put a down payment outside of VA. If you were a veteran, you would have options to do a VA loan. But people think because they've owned a home in the past, they don't necessarily qualify for the zero down or something that's considered a first-time home buyer type loan. And the reality is, if you haven't purchased a home, and this isn't in stone, but Josh can confirm or tell me I'm crazy one way or the other. But typically, if you haven't purchased a home in 3 years, you're considered a first-time home buyer. And so in many of these cases, because you haven't done something in a long period of time, you would potentially qualify for first-time home buyer type program, but it all depends on the market that you're in, right? In California, we don't really have any first-time home buyer type programs. Most people, when they think FHA, they think first-time home buyer or what have you, or they think low down payment, they think first-time home buyer, first-time home buyer. But really, where we are, there's not really a lot of them. Whereas we've talked about it before, Texas, some of these other states have a lot of first-time home buyer type programs. And so you would likely qualify just because it's been so long since you've purchased, but obviously you would need to meet the guidelines of, income and debt and all that good stuff. Anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I got a couple fun things to throw in there. The way that they look, if you're looking at a mortgage program that does specifically limit you to being a first-time home buyer, you cannot currently own a home. And you cannot have taken a mortgage interest deduction in the last 3 years. And I guess technically, if they were able to find that you owned a home free and clear a year and a half ago and sold it, it's harder to dig into that data. So I wouldn't recommend trying to find a loophole or see if a lender can figure it out, because for the most part, it's pretty easy to look up names. We get false positives all the time on saying, hey, prove Jeb Smith does not own this home over here that says Jeb Smith is the owner on title. Much more often that we have to disprove a false positive than actually someone gets through without disclosing a debt or owning another home, that type of stuff. So just remember that everything Jeb said about the first-time buyer stuff is true, but a thought here, when you have the land that's paid for, if you went to do new construction on that and you went to do a construction loan, your equity in the land can be used as your contribution towards the home. So that would be something looking into. And I've also had this conversation here recently. We don't get a lot of mobile manufactured homes in California, but they do exist. And what I will tell anyone, if you haven't been out and seen a modern manufactured home, people say, oh, haha, you live in a double wide. Well, I've seen some pretty spectacular double wides, and they're built much better than what you remember from the 70s and 80s, and you can get financing on them. If you own the land and it's permanently attached to the foundation, you can get FHA, conventional Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac financing on them. So Janice, I would possibly look at that. If you like the land where you're at and want a new stick-built home or a new manufactured home on there, you can get construction financing without coming up with money out of pocket, using the equity in the land as your contribution.
All right, there you go. From a lender. A Hoarder's Homestead was on another agent's live stream explaining that I was doing a modular land home purchase with NACA. I know you did a video in the past, but can you explain the benefits of it? Honestly, I would be doing you a huge disservice. I've talked about it, and at that time I had done some research, so I was in a position to tell you what was fresh on my mind. But with regards to NACA, what I would do is look at my channel, search that video, and read the comments. I've talked about this. The comments on that video are the gold in that whole video, because it's people that are actually giving you the experience of going through it, the successes of going through it, and the people that tried to go through it and had trouble. And it gives you all the insight that you need in order to see if it's worth your time to try to make it happen. I wasn't familiar with them actually doing it on modular land. I thought it was only on single family homes. So the fact that you can even do modular would be new to me. But again, I don't want to dive or go down that rabbit hole just because I'd be doing you a disservice, as I mentioned. So
since we're on YouTube, I will mention there's a genre of YouTube channels of people that sell modular manufactured homes, and they just do walkthroughs of the models of these things. So if you are interested, or if you've ever thought of it, or you're going, holy geez, I am getting priced out of the market, go look at these things. I hate to sound like I got stock in one of these manufactured housing companies, but I will tell you, I would not hesitate to live in one. An investor I know that is big in Texas says the best results they're having is buying land, acre lots, and putting a really nice manufactured double wide home on there, and then doing lease options to put people into them, and then they can buy them a year later. So do yourself a favor. We're on YouTube. Check that stuff out. If you've given any thought to it, if you're in a state where land can be purchased at a reasonable value, it's a good option.
All right. So Nightbot's in here throwing daggers again.
Someone went heavy on the emojis and Nightbot wasn't having it.
Caps lock. They didn't like it. Hilarious. I just laugh because it's like the way it approaches it's funny as hell. Okay, so Luxury Card Store gave us a $10 super chat, has a question that I'm going to let you answer, Josh, because it's primarily pertaining to loan fees. But so thank you for the super chat first off. But buyer, can you comment on these fees? So they got a commitment fee of $475, a first doc prep fee of $250, a second doc prep fee of $10, doc handling of $14, admin fee $1,000, red flag, closing protection letter $125, agent conveyance fee $395.
So these are called junk fees for a reason. And generally, like the easiest way I can say it is either from the company perspective or the individual salesperson, how they're structuring it. They are a shitty salesperson. So they are afraid to say, this is the price for my product. So what they do is say, look at my ultra low price over here on this new vehicle. And then, yes, for wheels, you pay this much. And for actually, having all the
you
plastic,
mean you want to drive it off
you want to drive it. You want it to have gas in it and things of that sort. That's what
$1,000.
So a commitment fee. Well, what are you committing to? How did you not know you were going to do it? So what I would say about this, I just had this conversation with a buyer from the channel here that Jeb hooked up with a great realtor that helped him out in the San Fernando Valley. And we went through this. When I give you an estimate as a buyer that you're going to go out and look, I don't put 5 different fees for escrow. We put down escrow fee. And then for title fee, we put down title fee. And magically, when your estimate comes in, we get to explain why there's 5 different fees in there. You go through there and they add up to what we're estimating, and we're usually a little bit high on that. In his instance, the escrow and title company were a little aggressive, so we were a little bit low. So we just went through and walked them through that. And what it is, so the reason why I pointed that out, this is not always the lender. So we want to look at who's charging it. Is it a lender junk fee? Is it an escrow junk fee, or is it a title junk fee? And actually step back for that client. We went through escrow and I'm like, good Lord, why do they have these 4 stupid fees? Well, you look at it and they had a really low escrow fee. So you look at their escrow fee and then you add in their 4 junk fees, and it was about $200 or $300 lower than I estimated on the escrow fee. So I'm sitting there going, why wouldn't you just charge a flat escrow fee? I don't know why they do or don't. So it's hard to look at things out of context here and say they're out of line. It sounds like the admin fee at $1,000. I guarantee you that's a lender fee. And again, why do we need an additional $1,000? Whatever your margins are that you need, I set my margins on the rates that we sell. And if there's not enough profit in there, then I need to increase my margins. I don't need to start tacking on extra junk fees. And it's the same thing with escrow and title. That escrow company, one of the fees they had in there was they had a courier messenger handling fee. And the reason why they did that is that if they call it a courier or messenger fee, they have to show what was spent on the couriers and messengers. By calling it a handling fee, well, I had to handle the couriers and messengers. I can charge whatever I want. And again, in the grand scheme of things, their total charges were very reasonable. So I don't get it. So it's not to say that just because you see junk fees, someone's overcharging you. For the most part, they generally are. But I see people that their whole deal is on the lender side, I want to advertise the world's lowest rate. So by taking that and charging an additional $1,000 admin fee, I can get to the margin that I want. So it's kind of hard to see it and take it out of context. Jeb's going to throw up our contact info. By all means, shoot me an email. I'd be more than happy to look at the estimate and kind of go through it. Depending on how far you are into the process, there's no backing out of it. I mean, if you're 2 days away from closing, there's no fighting it, no arguing it. They can tell you to pound sand and you have to close on your new purchase.
Yeah, so, but are they going to do that? Are they going to do that?
Well, if a buyer comes to you, we got a $75 concession from escrow.
But here's the. I'm asking a real question. As a buyer, I'm a buyer. I go to you, Josh. We're at the end, and I say, you know what? Screw this, dude. I'm not going to pay these fees. Like, I mean, if I were pissed off and you were a professional, I mean, chances are you're probably going to do something to make me happy. In most cases, right? I mean, I would. I mean, if it were reasonable, if I thought, hey, we had this conversation and none of this BS was there initially, and now it is, that's a conversation to be had. But if you received your initial disclosures and all this crap was on there, and you're just now bringing it to light, then you kind of got you got a problem.
So you just opened up a whole new can of worms. So back in the day, in 2005,
make it quick. We got a bunch of super chats.
Well, here, why don't we go to Sean, because that one super chat there, we can stay on topic there. So pull up the pink one, the $50 one.
So thank you, Sean, for the super chat. I'm not giving any of that to Josh, just so we're clear.
He's cheap and rude, Sean. Cheap and rude.
But yeah, so he just did a loan with Sean. Sean's a viewer of the channel.
Sean's the borrower. We were actually talking about the estimate that we reviewed. So it's good to see that he's still here watching, even though he's going to be in his home by the weekend. We were actually funding in the morning, and he'll record on Friday.
Awesome. Anyway, so you wanted to go down a rabbit hole. So let's hear it.
Well, yeah, you distracted me from the rabbit hole, so we'll just move on. It wasn't that important. My feelings are hurt. I won't share with you, Jeb.
All right. Well, Luxury Card Store also said thanks. That's what he thought about the fees anyway. So you answered the question and basically conveyed what he was already thinking, or she was already thinking. So
what I was going to say, Jeb, is again, 10, 15 years ago, before the current guidelines went into effect, a lender could give you a good faith estimate, and then you show up at closing, you're like, whoa, this is like 5 times more than what you gave me. Well, sorry, we were wrong. Now with the loan estimate, it sets the tolerances for your closing disclosure. So if you're looking at the closing disclosure, our lender items, box A, that $1,000 admin fee, if it wasn't disclosed on the loan estimate, it can't be charged at the closing disclosure. So you want to go back and look at those. Were they disclosed? Escrow and title have some slight different tolerances, but they're pretty tight tolerances on that as well.
Yeah. So, but I mean, if you do have questions, what I would tell you, if you're at the end, just ask to see if they can reduce. People will do things like that. You know, nothing's going to happen without asking. And most people don't want to hear me say that, but that's the reality, is that if you're having a problem with it, then have a conversation.
And all I'm saying is, don't be the person that asks right before closing when you think you have leverage. We can have any discussion you want. Let's have it when you get your initial disclosures.
Yep. There you go. Practitioner. With USAA, given option to end current forbearance at possible lower rate. Current rate 3.675. Should I try the new rate unknown or wait until the end of forbearance and then later IRRRL? So interest rate reduction loan through VA, 100% disabled. So disabled veteran, great loan. I would say, have they given you the possible new lower rate? I've had people reach out to me with regards to forbearance options, what they were offered, what they had prior to. I've seen people that had 4.25% interest rates, and the lender dropped them down to the low 3%, 3.125%, I believe what it was. So over a full percent. Chances are, if you're able to do an interest rate reduction loan, and you're at 3.625, VA rates are really good. Chances are you could probably get something in the low 2% range, which Josh can talk about. But in order to get out of forbearance, you're going to have to either make the payments, right?
No? VA is the only one that will allow you to do an IRRRL and bring it current. Now, here's the problem. Most lenders are not following the VA guidance. I have exactly one lender that will follow the VA guidance, and I know of one other direct lender out there that is following the VA guidance. So most people you contact will tell you, hey, you got to end the forbearance, you got to bring it current, you got to make some payments. VA does not require that. Awesome. There are a handful of lenders out there that will follow it.
So what is your recommendation? I would say it wouldn't hurt to see where they're going to lower your rate, and because it doesn't require you paying anything or doing anything up front. So just see what they're willing to offer, but maybe also talk to a lender and see what rate you could get doing a VA streamline or an IRRRL, if you will, and see what makes sense. Compare the two and go that direction.
It's just like shopping for a loan. Get
Yep.
those terms, to get the terms on that option, shop for. And what I would say, USAA is a good company in general. I have a problem with Navy Federal, USAA, Veterans United. These are all for-profit companies, and they have marketed themselves in a way that veterans feel like they're some beneficial service for veterans. I have USAA. I have 2 insurance policies through them. I do not have anything else through them because they are expensive and not really experts in anything. We talk a lot about call centers. USAA, every piece of the organization is a call center. They treat you well. They're great for auto loans. They can be good for insurance. They can also be expensive for insurance. So always shop them. If they have good terms and you have a relationship with them, you like their portal, their app on their phone, there are good things about them. But always shop them and keep them on their toes. And on an IRRRL, you are almost on a VA mortgage of any sort. Navy Fed, USAA, Veterans United are not going to get you any world close to the best terms available.
Yeah, and if you need a lender, you want to talk to a lender, reach out to myself or Josh, and I'll connect you with somebody that can answer that question for you, guide you in the right direction. I know you've been on the channel before. I appreciate. I didn't say thank you earlier for the support, but thank you for the super chat as well. But we'll get you connected to somebody, and if they're not, I mean, they have to be able to provide that information to you. I saw your comments a little lower down, basically saying that they haven't given you the information. They have to. I mean, in order for you to accept it, they're going to have to tell you what the terms are. So maybe you need to have a phone conversation with them. If not, maybe you just move on. So
yeah, and if they say they don't want to give you the terms, just say, oh, cool, I'll do it. Just you need to send me the paperwork. Obviously, I have to sign. So when they send it out, they're going to disclose what those terms are. You don't actually have to sign it. They cannot modify your loan without your signature. So say, cool, I'll do it. They'll prepare the doc, send it out, and you'll see what it is.
All right. So let's see but thank you again for the super chat. And then a luxury card store just keeps giving us money here. I haven't even started looking at houses yet. Those fees were on my pre-qual. I would say find another lender. Wow. Just went there, didn't I?
Well,
Nightbot.
it's bizarre that
Nightbot wouldn't like that. All right, so cool name is getting just ridiculed here by Nightbot in the chat here. So initially put that herd increase in lumber has added 30%. I don't know if it's 30%, but the margins are high. I mean, I've told the story. I mean, I went out and bought a sheet of plywood for a countertop that some cabinets I was adding in my house, and what would normally have cost me 5/8 sheet of plywood, probably $10. I paid $87 for that sheet of plywood. So in that case, it's gone up more than 30%. But as a whole, I think the numbers that you're looking at are home builders. Their costs have increased. And I don't remember the number. 30% sounds about right. And you know, people have been talking about lumber prices coming down and all of that because they're looking at the charts and looking at the futures on lumber and what have you. And while they did moderate a little bit, I don't know that that's going to be something that is going to moderate over the next couple of months. I think you're still going to see lumber cost high. We get a lot of lumber from Canada. We get a lot of lumber from places outside of the United States. And quite frankly, there are still issues with regards to shipping, with regards to trucking, being able to ship this stuff. I mean, it just the whole there's just a constraint on all of that. And I don't think it's going to correct itself. And the way that home builders are moving, with regards to, building houses and what have you, a lot of these guys have put things on hold just because costs have gone up so much. So I don't know where you're going to see costs go over the next couple of months. Josh, insight on that?
No, nothing in the short term. We know that it's a speculative, not bubble, but a speculative run up in lumber prices. It will come down and normalize. There's no fundamental reason other than supply chain issues and weird stuff with the pandemic and people wanting to build. So increased demand, troubles with supply, and then investors start saying, we can pile in here and push prices up even higher and make some more money.
No, absolutely. Darren Buttery, also a regular in commenting, $20 super chat. Thank you, Darren. Just wanted to share that I closed on Monday. Title company said they never received earnest. Luckily, I had pics of check and tracking number. Then they admitted they lost it and had to sign a few docs to get my bank to reissue replacement. Wow.
That title company is really on it that they got to closing before they realized. I wonder if either of the agents, especially the listing agent, realized they had no deposit from their buyer, or at least they thought they had no deposit from their buyer.
Are we talking the initial deposit, the earnest? I'm assuming when you say earnest money, that's what you're talking about, because normally they wouldn't even open the escrow, if you will, or the title order without having that earnest money. Or are you talking about the closing funds? When you went into close, they said they didn't have it and couldn't do it. Let me know, because that just seems absurd that they would have gotten that far in the process and not known that the original earnest money to open the contract was there. And Lucas Crouch, new member. Thank you, Lucas, for joining, becoming a member of the channel. If you guys are watching right now, you haven't already, you find value in the content, you think Josh's hair looks nice, you like the glasses, you like his shirt. If you like his shirt, hit the like button.
Jeb is obsessed with my shirt. Just so you guys know, that's the 4th comment today. Jeb is obsessed with my shirt.
Look at it. It looks like
he can't pull off floral, so he's sad about it.
It's not floral. What's that cake that you eat that has the colors in the middle of it? The cake batter? Your shirt looks like cake batter.
If I move, it looks like Fruity Pebbles.
There you go. So if you like Josh's hair, hit the like button. Anyway, let's move back up here and take some comments.
Here, this is a good one here from both ends. Jay Wynn comes back with, are any loan associated costs due up front? And let's expand that. Let's say loan costs and real estate costs. So from our end on the loan, you do not pay anything up front. We get paid at closing when everything closes. Now, third parties can require payment up front. So what third parties can and would require payment? Your appraiser. The appraiser is not going to do the work without getting paid. So we pay them, then they go out and inspect the home. So on purchases, for time issues, there can be a delay in us getting disclosures out to you and you signing them, which we can't charge you anything until that's done. So on a purchase, people we have good relationships with, unless we have a feeling that we got a sketchy person that might not actually close, we're always going to just put that on the company card and get it done up front in the interest of time. The only other issue from the loan side, if you're buying a condo or anything else with a homeowners association, a lot of times we need to get documentation from them, an HOA cert, and that can require to be paid up front. Those are really the only things on the loan side that get paid up front. How about the real estate side, Jeb? What does someone need to be prepared before closing?
Yeah, really just inspections. Any inspections that you're going to do on the property are really the only cost that you have to worry about. Now, depending on, home inspection is one fee that you're going to pay. But if sometimes the inspector has the ability to do sewer inspections, have the ability to do additional inspections, mold inspections, or what have you. If they don't, and you plan on getting additional inspections, then those are additional fees that you might end up paying as well. Depending on where you're located here in Southern California, the average, the median home price is here locally is around $1 million at the moment. You're probably going to pay somewhere around $400 or so for a home inspection on that property. Obviously, the higher you go up in value of a home, typically the bigger the home is, the longer it takes the inspector, the more you're going to pay. But outside of that, you're not really going to pay any additional fees up front outside of the appraisal and the home inspection. I have a question here from Holly Dahl. Holly had asked about 41 days on market. No offers, really well-kept Victorian, but it has knob and tube electrical. The price dropped $10K and now is $189. It's out in the country, but should we risk offering $175? My question, I guess I would ask, is what's the risk in offering $175? The risk would be, or that they accept it, or potentially that they don't accept it in that case. So I would say talk to your agent, find out what you think the home is worth. Unfortunately, I don't have any experience with Victorians with knob and tube electrical, something we don't see here in Southern California, but find out what it costs to, if you're going to keep that, what does it cost to bring that current? If you're planning on doing that, what are other homes in that area selling for that don't have that type of electrical, and does the cost to put it in make sense in comparing those two? And at the end of the day, put an offer in and see what happens. I mean, most people, when putting a price out there, and people will argue this, but typically speaking, when you put a list price on your house, you're expecting some sort of negotiation. Rarely. This is a market once in my career where I've seen people expecting to pay above the asking price. Whereas typically speaking, most sellers are expecting some sort of negotiation. So, if you're expecting to end at 175, maybe you start lower than 175. But find your number that you're not willing, your threshold, if you will, that you're not willing to go above, and see what happens. But make sure you got a pro on your side, and you should be in good shape. I got a couple more super chats. No, I don't know what's going on over here.
Thought there was one that popped up, but then it disappeared.
Lucas gave us $5. Thanks, Lucas. Also became a member there, as we mentioned earlier. So let's go and see. Josh, got a question? Put it in there.
Yeah. So Michael, with the appropriate gloves of the Cowboys, not one of those silly Bronco things. Speaking of Bronco, where's Joey? Did Joey skip us this week? He didn't want to. He didn't want to tune in.
He's sad. He's sad this week.
He got tired that no one liked those gloves and that the Cowboys are better than the Broncos. But anyways, Michael says, can you tell me how a 203K loan works? 203K is an FHA loan program that allows you to finance both the purchase of a property or the refinance of a property in addition to funds to improve the home. There's a limited 203K that you can only do about $35,000 worth of work, and there's some specific types of work that can be done there. And then there's a full 203K that enables you to do almost anything. You can't put in a swimming pool, that type of stuff, but kitchen, bath, roof, anything structural for the home. So in essence, it works exactly like a normal FHA loan. There's just some additional work. The appraiser appraises the value as is, and they also look at the scope of work from the contractor and the budget, and then they do an after repaired value and say this is what the home will be worth once all of the work is done. So when you close the loan, the purchase is funded, the money goes so that the seller gets their money, and then an account is set up to do the work. Now, one thing that people need to be aware of, you can do draws against that, but you have to start the work. So you only get reimbursed for work that's done. So let's say you wanted $50,000 of work to your home. You do $10,000 worth of work and you put in for a draw. They come out, they do an inspection and say, yep, you're making progress. Here's $10,000. So it's not quite as easy as an FHA loan where you just have to have enough to close. You need to have a little bit left over to fund those draws throughout the process, but it can be a great way of getting a distressed property and getting it brought into current condition so that you're not having to fight for the beautiful trophy properties on the market right now.
And now this is like, I wasn't paying attention to anything you said.
I don't care. Stupid.
I was reading an email. So if we're completely transparent here, but you talked about the appraised value versus the future value.
Yep.
And how that works. Okay. And then did they change it now?
Where you don't bro?
Didn't they change it though, where you don't have to be a licensed contractor anymore and you can actually do the repairs yourself?
It's a good one. I'm not sure, and if so, it would be more likely on the limited than the full, right. And it would come down to the scope of work that you're doing. Because it used to be a much more expansive program. They've tightened it up over the years. Where they have problems, which is more common with an owner doing the work than with a contractor, is kind of where they've tightened everything up.
All right, Nightbot, it's hilarious. I wonder if I can I customize the messages on Nightbot and just make it say what I want it to say? Because I think this is hilarious.
I can already see that next Halloween that Jeb is going to go as Nightbot and just be insulting everyone. Ask them if they want to dance.
Yeah, you want to dance? Are you done? That's hilarious. Oh God. All right. Anyway, let's move up here. So here's a question from Mike Chapnick. As a realtor, is it okay to use a mentor that is at a different brokerage, or is that a conflict of interest? No, I think that's completely fine. Mentors can come in many ways. In fact, they don't even need to be in real estate at all. But yeah, I think from a different company, no problem there. Just, guiding people and educating them and helping them understand the business or whatever it is. I think that's completely fine. Now your office manager might say something different or what have you, but I don't see any issues with it. Josh, anything there you see that potential issues?
No, I mean, where would a conflict come in if you guys were both negotiating, you both put in offers, have clients put in offers on the same house, or you're negotiating against them, they're a listing agent? Technically, you could get into something there, but it's pretty rare that two agents in a metro would come across a transaction and easy enough to work around. So if it's someone that you value their opinions and experience and knowledge and expertise, go for it.
Nope. Peaky Bella 01. What will people do when their mortgage exceeds the value of their home? Why would they continue to pay their mortgage? Wouldn't they try to sell, causing inventory to increase? Yes. Why would what? I mean, I guess my first question is why? Like, what makes you think that somebody's mortgage is going to exceed the value of their home? And the second thing is people's mortgage payments are a fixed payment, right? Something they have to pay every month, whether they decide to rent a property or own a property. And if they're comfortable every month with the monthly payment, say, regardless of where the value is, why would they stop making their payments just because their value's gone down? Because at some point, they're going to have to either go rent something else or buy something else in that case. And so with interest rates having, historic lows for the last year and a half now, most people's payments are considerably lower than they ever thought they would be, and probably much lower than it would cost to rent something in many markets. So I think even if you saw values decrease to a point where somebody owed more than their house is worth, I think it's a different situation than '08, right? '08, you had people that had adjustable rate mortgages that adjusted, right? The end of the term came due, the interest rate changed, or it went from an interest only loan to a fully amortized payment. So not only were they underwater on the value, they also had a change in their monthly payment to a point where they could no longer afford those payments. That's not what's happening right now. So while you may see a decline at some point in the future, and in some markets, yeah, somebody bought with an FHA loan or a VA loan, at some point, maybe we don't see this appreciation and values drop and that person owes more. But why would that person just say, I'm out? You're going to have some people that do that, but it's different this time. And so I don't see that actually taking place. But in your example here, wouldn't they try to sell? Yeah, some would try to sell. Absolutely. And if there's not enough money there to cover realtor commissions or closing costs, they're going to have to go to the bank and ask for a short sale and go through that process. But less likely to happen in this environment than 15 years ago when it was happening, or I guess it wasn't 15 years ago, 13 years ago when it was happening the last time. Josh, thoughts on that?
No, I just take it to its logical conclusion. So you said, hey, they got to go to the bank and ask for a short sale, or they don't want to do that. They're just upset. They bury their head in the sand. It goes to foreclosure. Short sale and foreclosures don't mean that home values are going down in a neighborhood. Doesn't mean you're going to get a discount on a property. If the home is in otherwise good condition and there's no other homes for sale in that neighborhood, it's going to sell for what the market value is. So, we're looking for a reason why we might see increased inventory in the future. That's not going to be a reason. Again, anyone that was in forbearance for the last 12 months, the value of the home has gone up at a higher rate than they've increased the loan balance through forbearance. So they have more equity than they had a year ago. So we are nowhere near anyone getting upside down. And all of those forbearances will be wound down sooner than we see the appreciation disappearing.
No, absolutely. Johnny Stash got a good question here. How long until I can cancel my house contract? Buyers are buying my house contingent on me finding a new house. However, after 3 months, I didn't find a new home and want to cancel now. He goes on to say, we went into contract 3 months ago, but I give up and want to cancel and try next year. In theory, you could cancel now. Again, I haven't seen your contract or what have you, but I had a client that did this earlier this year. We were in a similar position. They were contingent upon finding a replacement property, and we had their home in escrow, and it was about 3 months. And eventually, what happened, instead of the seller wanting to back out, the buyer ended up backing out just because they were tired of waiting. But we put it back on the market and received other offers, and at that point, the seller just decided that it wasn't the right time. But in theory, you should be able to just call your real estate agent and say, look, I'm not finding the right property. I just want to pull it off the market. And, that's essentially what should happen. So you should be able to do it now. Now, if you have a listing agreement with your agent, which you should, even though you choose to withdraw that, you still have a contractual agreement with the agent. Now, that doesn't mean that your property is going to stay active on the MLS, but it might not be completely canceled. It might just, here in California, we have something called a withdrawn status, and they basically pull the property from the MLS. It comes off the market, but it's not necessarily a canceled listing yet because you're still under contract, at which point that contract expires. Then it would go to a cancel status or an expired status at that point. So depending on how the agent on the other side does it, but regardless, it should come off the market if you choose to do that, where it's no longer showing as an active property. So hopefully that is helpful for you.
You want a quick hitter here, Jeb?
Yep.
PN says an appraisal on new construction is higher than the initial. No, but what you will often have is you'll need the final inspection, because they're going to go out to facilitate a timely closing. They're going to do the inspection up front and deliver a value based off of the work being completed, and then they go out just before closing and confirm that the home has been completed, and that generally has a fee to it. But otherwise, a home is a home. The appraisers are going to charge the same schedule, whether it's an existing home or a new home. You'll just have that additional $150 or so for them to reinspect and verify that the home's been completed.
All right. So Dar was here, is a regular as well, has a question. Under contract for a $200,000 house. Closing costs are estimated at $13,000. Isn't that a little high? It's a USDA loan, hoping for buyer credits after inspection, but I'm worried. So probably missing some information there that Josh is going to wanna hear. But let's hear your thoughts, Josh.
In general, yes, it sounds very high. I mean, 5% would be $10,000, but we always go back to this. I always want buyers to know you do not have $13,000 in closing costs. There's $13,000 in costs. Some of those are closing costs. Some of those are prepaids. So let's go back and revisit what that difference is. Closing costs are one-time charges due to getting a loan, an appraisal, a credit report, title, escrow. They're things that are not going to recur. Prepaid items are things that have to be paid at closing and add to that $13,000 total, but they're ongoing costs of home ownership, your property taxes, your homeowner's insurance, your mortgage insurance, your interest. So that $13,000 is made up of both of those. And yes, it does sound high. I bet there's an origination fee, an admin fee, lots of fees in there that you don't have to pay. And again, one of the cool things by the USDA loan, this is probably what you're referencing, buyer credits after inspection. On a USDA loan, it's the only loan program that I'm aware of that if it appraises for more than what you've agreed to pay, you can finance what it appraises for, and those additional funds can be used to cover your closing costs. So cool feature of the USDA loan. And if you're in an area that is considered rural and the home you're looking at is eligible, it's another big benefit of the USDA program besides the zero down.
All right, there you go. Let's see here. I'm just reading through some questions. Let's see here. So PN, please, can you explain how an appraisal works for a new home construction? If it appraises at a higher or lower value compared to the initial purchase price at contract. Thanks. So a new home construction appraisal works just like an existing home construction appraisal, is that they're using comparable new home sales to justify their price. Now, what happens in, and these builders have a little more insight than existing homes in some ways, because when they sell these developments, they have a lot of things that are under contract that never report anywhere except for the paperwork that they see. So, typically they're able to help the appraiser with information to get that appraisal accepted. Now, I don't do a lot of new construction per se, but I'm not familiar with a lot of new construction homes not appraising. Typically, my understanding is that those usually appraise in most cases. So you're likely not going to have an issue there. But if it did appraise lower than the contract price, assuming you didn't waive your appraisal contingency, that's an opportunity for you to potentially negotiate a new price. In the case where it appraises higher, then you just have equity in the property. But my guess would be when it appraises, it probably appraises at what you paid for it, unless the builder already has new phases in development that they're working on where there's already higher prices that have sold. Then maybe in that case, it might sell for more. But you can't really do anything with that equity at that time. It's just, money in the bank, if you will. So that's more or less how they work.
Because you have a more experienced seller who has, it's important for them that when they sell a home to know that they're not going to have problems at the end. What I can say is in 26 years of doing this, thousands of loans, hundreds of them, new construction purchases, I have never seen one come in low. That doesn't mean they don't. I'm sure they do. I've never seen one.
No, exactly. There you go. Lucas, who gave us a super chat earlier, has a question. Can you help expand on ways to sweeten the pot on offers? We are in SoCal. Any creative ideas? Not willing to waive inspection. Yeah, I don't think you should waive the inspection. We've talked about that many times. People on here probably get tired of me talking about this, but obviously sellers look at two things. They typically look at the price. They look at the down payment. Those things may or may not be controllable in your case, depending on what you're able to put down, but it is what it is. What can you do differently? You can offer 3% on the escrow deposit, right? That's pretty much the max in SoCal that should be put on a purchase agreement. You can shorten your contingency periods. Talk to your lender, talk to your realtor and ask how quickly, the home inspection can get done. Shorten those contingencies to as short as you can. If I call Josh and I say, hey, Josh, do you think you can get a loan approval in a week? He says, yeah, absolutely. As long as, we can get the appraisal out there or whatever it is, then guess what? I'm going to shorten that contingency as short as I can to help my offer stand out. So maybe I'm doing that on the home inspection as well. Maybe I'm waiving the appraisal in some cases. Maybe my agent says, hey, look, these are where the last couple of homes sold. Chances are it's going to appraise. I might waive that appraisal contingency. The last couple of transactions I've done, we've waived the appraisal. And fortunately, we've been pretty good on the appraisal side. Really haven't had any issues in that case. So appraisals, could or could not be, it could be an issue depending on where you're located, but that's pretty typical in this market. If you don't want to waive it, then you've just got to do everything else right. I would take any potential seller fees out, right? I mean, fees that you're asking the seller to pay. If you're asking for a home warranty, axe it. Get rid of the home warranty. Ask your agent if they'll pay the home warranty, or maybe you just don't have one. Just try to get rid of any ancillary fees that aren't necessary in the process to make your offer as clean as possible. Ask your lender how quickly they can close the loan. Hey, Josh, can you close a loan in 21 days? Sure. 21-day escrow. That's what we're doing. And just make it as solid as possible. In addition, have your lender call the listing agent on the other side and have a conversation with them, assuming you're working with a professional and you trust that person to have that conversation. If you're working with one of the big box lenders out there, I mean, the call center type, probably not going to happen. But if you're working with a broker, somebody that's knowledgeable, you're going to be able to get them to have that conversation. And, have your agent find out what's important to the seller. Use that stuff in your offer. Try to just tailor it as much as you can to the seller, but also shorten those contingencies. Outside of that, there's not really a lot you could do. You could also do the escalation clause. We've talked about that, where you go above and beyond a certain price up to a certain price. So that those are also options. Anything else you want to add in there, Josh?
No, you covered it all. I would throw in an interesting anecdote that Lucas is here saying I'm not willing to waive an inspection. We have people saying I'm not willing to waive an appraisal contingency. We have a viewer here that we just recently closed a loan, or will be closing a loan for here shortly. They went in with no appraisal contingency. Our appraisal came in $30,000 low. And their agent, who you referred them to, performed a miracle for them and got a $20,000 price reduction on that. So nothing is set in stone. If you truly waived every contingency and had no way of backing out, then you're kind of locked in. But if you have any contingency and a way of getting out of the transaction, everything is open to negotiation. You want to be honest, forthright, and not hold things off to the last minute, like we were talking about when negotiating with your lender. Same thing when negotiating with the seller. Be upfront, let them know. He was prepared to come in with about 10 to 15,000 if it was short. wasn't prepared to come in 30,000 short, and we rebutted the appraisal. We went all the way through it. We showed all of the comps, and we also found out that the other unit that was identical to this one in the same complex that had just been appraised was also having appraisal issues. So it wasn't likely to close and give another comp that would then push the next value higher than that. So Jeb talks about this all the time. Everything is open to negotiation. Even if you have no inspection contingency, you're going to do your inspection. And if we find out the roof's about ready to collapse, guess what? We're going to have a negotiation.
No, absolutely. You can buy the property as is, keep your inspection contingency in place, right? Still have the inspection. I've two of the last transactions I've done, we've said it's an as is purchase, and yet we've done our inspection and we've gone back and had the seller do repairs, and they did them. You have leverage once you're in escrow, but you also have to have reasonable people on the other side.
And I don't want this, Jeb, to sound like a commercial for realtors. But we've talked about this. Real estate is more than 80-20. It's probably 95-5. Most realtors are not good at their job. They're not going to represent you. They're not going to have, not that they don't have your best interest at heart, they're not capable of representing your best interest. Just like Jeb said, with two properties as is, was able to get concessions done. Nicole on this other property, no appraisal contingency, got a $20,000 concession. People focus on what a realtor costs or what the line item is on the closing statement that realtor is going to make. What I can tell you is having one of those top 5% realtors in your corner when it comes time to negotiate is worth its weight in gold, and it will save you far more than going to the person. I mean, what did we have this one last week where the guy had negotiated, someone was going to represent him for $4,500 and rebate him the rest? Cool. If you can win a negotiation with your realtor, you are screwed when it comes time for them to negotiate for you.
There you go. And Michael DeRee now has the best comment of the night. Says that Josh bought that shirt off the 4th of July rack 10 years ago.
Bro,
That's classic.
I've been sticking up for you in the Joey Crack war. You are now on the bad list because 4th of July has nothing to do with my beautiful floral shirt.
That thing is so far from floral. Look at that thing. Oh boy. Anyway, Jennifer, stop your contributions. $5 super chat. She's trying to buy Josh beer. Josh cannot drink beer. Josh is sick. Josh has been in the hospital. He cannot have beer. Therefore, I will drink his beer. Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, let's see here. Hello there had a question. When is the best time to shop for rates? Closing on a new build in October. I think this is a good opportunity for you just to run into rates here, Josh. So we'll translate into that. But they have an in-house lender which offers incentives. Can other lenders even beat the cashback incentives? So let's talk about that first before we dive into rates. So we're going to answer your question on shopping for rates, but let's address the second question first. Go for it.
That's absolutely the big one. So generally what you see, what does a builder want? They want control and certainty. We talked about how they generally know what that appraisal is going to come in. They don't have problems with low appraisals. They don't want to have a problem with some slapdick loan officer saying, yeah, the client's approved, and they get 2 months down the line and they go, oh yeah, the guy's actually not approved. And now they have done upgrades to that person's interests and tastes, and they can't sell the home or can't sell it for what it's worth, and they have delays, and their money on their construction loan is tied up longer. So they have a strong incentive to put you with a lender that they know is going to close on time for them. It's not necessarily about for you. So generally what they do, we all know the design center is the biggest trap in the world. Upgrades are they charge twice what they are. So generally your incentive comes in the form of, we're going to give you a $10,000 credit at the design center. So it can be a trap, but what you don't see is that the builders lenders aren't real aggressive on price. So you're overpaying on the loan, you're getting it back over here. It's just a big shell game. You always want to price it out. One thing that you can always do, I would normally never recommend this because that lender is going to take it in the shorts if you do this. If you feel like you're on the wrong side of that and you need to get the builder incentives, you can close that loan and start your refinance immediately to get the best terms on the loan after getting that incentive. Most times we can put numbers that are better even factoring in the incentive. We can save you the money to close. We had one out here in Palm Desert, a client that it was written that if you use our lender, you get $10,000 at the design center. And they went back and said, hey, that's a cool story. I'm going to buy the house and I want the $10,000 and I'm using my lender. Your lender pre-approved me. You know I'm qualified. You don't need this leverage. And they were able to do it. Not always able to, but sometimes able to. And that's your best of all possible worlds. You go through the process of showing their lender that you qualify, and then you say, cool, I did what you wanted. Now I want my upgrades or my lender credit, whatever it may be.
No, good. I mean, that's exactly what you need to hear. Now, what he meant by the lender taking it in the shorts is, typically speaking, if you refinance your loan within 6 months after getting a new loan, the lender that did your loan is going to have to repay any compensation they made on that loan back to the investor. So if you like your lender, don't refinance within 6 months outside or after refinancing, right? Have that conversation with your lender, and chances are your lender will be able to work with you to help you in that case. But in this situation, that's one way to approach it. But let's talk about rates, Josh, right? Got 205 people on right now. I think it's a good opportunity to talk about what the bond market did this week. We've got CPI numbers coming out tomorrow. Where do we go for rates? Let's try to keep it concise, but give people enough information that they feel armed when out there.
So we're at a really critical point right now because the CPI figures are coming out tomorrow. We've covered this in previous week's lives, and what happens is the CPI figures is a total of the monthly figures for the last 12 months. So for March, April, and May of last year, we had a negative figure fall off, and then this year a nice positive figure pop on. So that figure has gone way, way up. I think we're at 4.2% year over year last month, and we're likely to see it go up again as another negative number falls off and a hot number, not quite as hot as last month. So let's just take a peek at this. I need to share screen.
Are you a robot?
I am. So here we go. So we talked about this last week. This is a pennant formation. It means that these prices, we've been in this narrow range for going back to the beginning of April, but they're starting to get squeezed as the lows are getting higher, the highs are getting lower, and you should see a breakout one way or the other. So it tells us again that tomorrow's CPI figures are important. If we go back to last month, again, we got May 10th here. We had a bad day. So we were way up here, looked like we were breaking above the 100-day moving average, which means good rates, likely to see rates moving better and lower in the future. And we had that hot CPI figure. We closed at the lows of the day, below the 100-day moving average, a bad day. This was 100 basis points in 3 days. So essentially rates got a quarter point worse in 3 days. And we've spent the time since then regaining all of it, and we're almost back there. So you can see here, we have this, which is a Fibonacci number. We have that 100-day moving average that we closed right at. So we have dual resistance right here. So depending on what happens with that CPI figure tomorrow, and there's not a lot of mystery, we know it's going to be hot. And I think the market is going to shake it off, and we're going to break through to better interest rates there. If you've watched this, you know I say rates are going lower. Don't necessarily say they're going lower now, but over the next 2, 3, 4 years, we're going to see even better rates than what we've seen. But this is looking like we should break through tomorrow. And the reason why I say that is the last 2 months, we saw this really bad reaction to the hot CPI figure. The market has kind of figured out like what goes into that number. And Jeb has an article here that he sent over to me earlier. He'll probably post a link to it, just explaining that, yes, there are prices for many things that are up year over year. And so we see CPI figures, especially when we're looking at a year over year figure where March, April, and May of last year were really low. It looks like inflation is really high. It's not. We even see things like Jeb and I were talking, Chipotle raised prices to cover the higher wages that they're paying employees. Sherwin-Williams raised prices of their paint to cover the higher wages that they're paying employees. I do believe that we are seeing sort of an overdue increase in wages for lower priced employees. But think about that. Does that mean they're going to do it again next year and the year after that and the year after that? we have more entry-level employees than we in most times have entry-level jobs. As everything normalizes, that's not likely to happen. So a year from now, we're going to be back where we were. The article that Jeb mentioned says projecting forward 10 years, we're going to have a hard time seeing 2% inflation. And that's the same fight that the Fed has been having for the last 10 or 11 years since the recession in 2008. Can we get inflation up above 2%? And it's just not going to happen. So we had talked about what does that actually mean for you guys in terms of interest rates. And one of the tools that I like to use and like to show, I need to switch. We're going to share a different screen. And let's go.
I'm just going to sit over here, guys. I'm just going to hang out. Drink some water.
We're going to put you in a little picture over there. So this here is the Optimal Blue Mortgage Market Index. You guys can find this if you just Google OBMMI. Optimal Blue is the biggest pricing engine in the mortgage industry. I forget the exact number, but 70 or 80% of all mortgage companies in the country use this for their internal pricing and locking. So when a loan officer talks to you, they're most likely putting the information into Optimal Blue, they're getting the pricing back, and then they lock the loan. So this is current data from actual locked loans with lenders around the country. So what I can say is, if you've watched our numbers, I'm always quoting lower numbers than this because as a broker, we can get better numbers than this. And with that, what I can say is, if you're looking to say, hey, is this quote I'm getting reasonable? If it's in the ballpark to slightly lower than this, it's not a bad quote. If you're seeing anything significantly higher than this, someone is charging you too much money. So to put it into context, 3.141, the average on a 30-year fixed. I haven't locked one at 3% in 2-3 weeks. We had a couple of our best qualified clients with a bunch of equity on a refinance that we locked at 2.75 this week. The 15-year is in that 2.25 range. Jumbo is about right here, and that's probably because the big independent mortgage banks, who are Optimal Blue's #1 customer, are fairly competitive on that product. Now, the one that stands out here that's just absolutely batshit crazy is that 30-year FHA figure being 3.25. If you are getting government financing, FHA or VA, and you go to a bank or direct lender, you are going to get hosed. It's just their business model. They use government loans as a profit center to subsidize slightly competitive rates on their conventional loans. If you were coming to us today and you did not need a lender credit and you had a credit score 680 or above, that FHA would be 2.25, and we'd be getting you a small lender credit with no lender fees. If I click this over, let me see if I do this. It just adds it to the chart. They normally show VA in here, and they have VA a little more competitive at about 2.7, 2.8, which still, it's almost the same as an FHA. It's about 0.5% higher than what we would be. But the cool thing I like about this is when you get to this chart, not only can you see the trend, you can take away every other loan that you don't care about. So you say, I know I'm getting FHA financing. I take everything away. And I can put in here and go, well, I know my FICO is 680. I can put it in there, and that's actually for less than a 680. I can put in my FICO here at 680, and then it kind of shows me what that where that offsets it and what it increases. So it gets you a little bit of a more accurate quote, and it's an easy way to look and just compare a lender that you might be shopping with. But you can see this trend has been down for the last several weeks. Tomorrow is going to be important. Anyone that's a little bit nervous should, or with a really short-term closing and is a little bit nervous, or not, someone that's just risk averse, probably should lock, because we could have a reaction like we had last month, where we get the hot CPI figure and the bond market just sells off and we see rates get worse. I don't see any risk of falling out of the bottom of the range, but we're either going to see a nice rally that will take us maybe 0.25% better in interest rates from where we are right now, or we're going to stay a little bit similar after a couple days negative response to that hot CPI figure that we're going to see tomorrow.
All right, there you go. That should give you a little insight into interest rates and what to do. I got a lot of people asking, where it should be, and new construction, October, November, all of those, just keep and just join us every Wednesday. We'll continue to update you on rates and give you a little more insight as to where things are going.
Just to circle back, Jeb, the last question is, when should I start shopping for rates? You should pick a lender now. It's not that a lender with a really aggressive price now is going to be poorly priced later. And we've talked about this before. The most important thing, whether it's a realtor or a lender, is that you have an expert on your side. Do your shopping now. Find out who has the best terms available. Find out who you're most comfortable with and who can answer your questions and that you feel like is an expert and an advocate in your corner. They're likely to still have the best rates in the fall when you're ready to close. And for us as a broker, we're always going to have the best rates, because if I price you with one lender today, it may be a different lender in the fall, but we're still going to be able to find out a lender of the 20 or so that we work with regularly that has the best terms on any given day.
All right, there you go. I got a couple good questions coming in here, so let's hit those up. Don White, can you tell me anything about buying out a sibling share of an inherited home with an FHA loan? Since it's being probated, are there any differences in the process? In theory, no. Assuming, your offer is the one that's accepted on the deal, getting an FHA loan, there really shouldn't be any issues there. Assuming, again, when I think of probated homes, and on occasion, I think that, maybe the maintenance and that sort of thing of the home, but, as long as the home's in, livable condition, no issues with regards to chipping paint, any FHA issues that could come up there on the appraisal, then you should be fine. Nothing to really worry about on that. Now, occasionally with probated properties, how they're handled, whether they go to the market or what have you, is a whole different situation. So that would take us down a rabbit hole, but I'm not going to go there at the moment. This is a good question from Alex G. Trying to buy a home that's listed $60,000 over the highest listed comp in the neighborhood. Their realtor said it may be possible short sale. Can you explain that? So what happens on a property is if you don't, if you don't have enough equity to sell that property, then it can be a short sale, which means that you have to go to the lender and ask them to essentially reduce the amount that's owed on that property so you can sell it. So in some cases, homeowners are in that position, but they want to sell their property. They don't want to do a short sale. So they're listing it higher than it's actually worth so that there's enough money there to cover any potential fees with regards to selling the home and paying off the other mortgage. So could that be the case? Absolutely. The realtor on the other side should be able to give you a little bit more insight as to, it may be a possible short sale. I mean, I guess the may is depending on what price they get. It may or may not be a short sale. So, maybe depending on what you're willing to offer and what they're willing to accept is going to determine whether or not, it falls into the short sale category, but going to be difficult to know without actually putting in an offer, unfortunately, unless the agent on the other side can give you exactly what that number is that they're looking for.
Well, and it's listed, right? And Jeb, when you put it into the MLS, you have to put in there whether it's a short sale or a probate or a foreclosure, a notice of default.
Correct.
Because it's a different purchase agreement that is required to be used. And you're having as a buyer to acknowledge that, hey, even if the seller accepts my number, the bank then has to accept the number.
Very true.
And doing the research on the back end is not all that hard. Your agent can pull a property profile and say, hey, they took out this loan X number of years ago at this amount, and get an idea of what the current loan balance would be. Now, they could have been in forbearance for a year, so it could have gone up from there, but not all that hard to get a pretty solid idea of what's going on, including digging into the MLS and just seeing what they've disclosed as to whether it's a short sale or not.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, the more information you have in that situation, the better off you're going to be. But yes, it could potentially be a short sale, and that could be why they're approaching it the way they are. Jesse Hernandez bought a home in August of 2020 after selling my house of 8 years. If I sell now, under 1 year mark, will my net proceeds be taxed to hell? Can I avoid the tax by rolling the proceeds into a new house? So I'm assuming this is your primary residence. No, you would not be taxed to hell by selling the property now. Now, you might be taxed capital gains on where you purchased the property to where you're selling the property. If there's any gain from August of last year when you purchased it to now, then there could be potential capital gains taxes paid on that because, that's a new gain. But any gain that you had from the previous home that you owned over 8 years would not be taxed with selling it at this point. And to answer the second part of the question, can you avoid tax by rolling it into a new house? Again, assuming this is a primary, no. The rolling tax into a new property only works on investment properties, from one investment to the next. So in that case, you wouldn't be, but it doesn't really sound like you've got a lot to worry about, any past equity that you had, only any new appreciation you've had since you purchased the property.
And what I would say is where that comes from. Well, I don't remember whether it was in the late 80s, early 90s. Prior to that, the way you would not get taxed is if you rolled your proceeds into a new sale. So there's still that thought going around. The biggest thing is we're already in June, so it most likely would sell after 12 months. If you sell the home in the first 12 months, it's going to get taxed as ordinary income. So depending on what other income you have, that $50,000 profit is going to get added onto it. Will not only be taxed, it could push you into a higher tax bracket. After 12 months, you get into a short-term capital gains, and you can look up the rates on that and just see. I think we're at what, 15% if it's under 440,000 income,
yeah,
and about 20% if you're over 440,000 income.
And then actually, YouTube Car Spotter's Guide came out and said if you kept the property 2 years and 1 day, no capital gains on that new gain. So if you kept it until August of 2022, in theory, you could start you got 2 additional years, because you can only do the capital gains exemption once every 2 years, I believe is what it is. Is that right, Josh? Yeah, you can only sell a primary every 2 years. So in 2 years, you could have a new exemption on any appreciation you've gained from that point when you purchased it until then. If you sell it before, then there's obviously some tax consequences, but not on the amount that you put down, right? Only on the gain. All right, where are we here? Here we go. So hello there. Speaking of lenders, when shopping around, at what point am I tied to a given lender? After initial disclosure, conditional approval, appraisal ordered, when am I tied to them? The answer is really never, but you're going to get to a point where you're not going to have enough time to close with a lender. And so that you're really going to kind of be tied to them at some point. But Josh, I mean, we talk about this all the time. Find who you want to work with up front, compare a couple of lenders, find a broker, maybe a bank, maybe a credit union, compare everything. Don't just compare the interest rate and the fees. Talk to an expert, find out, the person that you're trying to have a conversation with or you want to use as your lender can answer your question, returns your calls, returns your emails. It sounds silly, right? Because it's like, hey, these people are doing business. Of course they're going to return your calls and emails. No, not necessarily true, and not necessarily in a timely manner, with the correct advice. So, every lender, we've talked about this as well. Josh can add on to this, but every lender in this market should be fairly comparable on rates, right? I mean, rates should only be off maybe 0.1% or so in this market. So it's going to come down to fees for one. How much is a lender charging you? And are you working with an expert? And so if you can determine that up front, you don't need to worry about how, long you're tied to them or when you can get out or what have you, because you got a pro on your side. But Josh, what do you want to add to that?
Well, here's the thing that I tell everyone. Obviously, I'm biased, but I think I'm the best lender for everyone that I talk to. But if you talk to 5 lenders and that's not obvious to you, then you should go with the person that you feel the strongest about. I caution people, don't call 5 people and go with the lowest priced. Call 5 people and go to the person that has competitive pricing and that not only, Jeb said, answers the phone, but answers the phone and hears you, asks the right questions, hears your questions, and gets you honest, accurate answers. And it's not always easy to tell, but you can tell when someone's fumbling over their answers or they're not really giving you the straight answer, not because they're lying to you, but because they don't really know. Make the calls so that like for me, I love it when people comparison shop and make a couple of phone calls, because when they're done, they go, yeah, they couldn't really answer the questions, or, oh, I didn't really like this, or they said, oh, I need to do all this. I got to do their online application before I can get an estimate. So it just do your due diligence up front. Do not put the highest and only weight on price, and find a good balance of someone who has competitive terms and knowledge and expertise and connects well with you.
There you go. Heard from the man himself. All right. All right, here. Sorry.
I was gonna ask if Nightbot chased everyone away, kicked everyone out.
He's on a rampage, or she's on a rampage at the bottom there. Keyshore, can I know from where the video is shooting? So we're in Huntington Beach, Southern California. Hopefully that helps you there. Let's see here. We had a good question. Oh, so same help. Hello person. Hello there. Ask about out-of-state loans. If you need a lender in Texas, we have a great lender in Texas. Shoot me a message, and I'll put our contact information up at the end. I'm happy to refer you over to Randy. He can take good care of you. All right. Any other questions here, Josh?
Got a good one here.
All right.
Keystone Angler, and
there you go.
He ain't kidding. And I'm hoping he's drinking Keystones while he's catching those big fish. That is a big fish. I can't read the scale, but that is a big fish.
So how bad is it to change jobs when you're in the process of getting a house?
It can be terrible, or it can mean absolutely nothing. So if you're changing within the same line of work and we have a similar or increasing pay trend, or if you can take a pay cut, you can say, hey, my boss is terrible. I'm taking the same job at a new company and I make half as much. If you still qualify, it doesn't matter. The important part is that we're not switching job types and we're not switching pay types. Let's say for whatever reason, you are in a job that you get $100,000 a year salary, and you take a new job and they give you $50,000 salary, and you're going to get $100,000 of commission. We don't have that 2-year history of commission, so that would be a problem. We would also have a problem if you're a police officer and you switch to being a school teacher tomorrow. That we could probably or possibly work through, just because of the way teachers with their unions and their job offers work. But the biggest one, we'll have people that do crazy things like they work for someone else as a W-2 loan officer, and then they go out on their own and they want to be a self-employed loan officer and buy a home the next month. We need a minimum of 1-year history, but more likely a 2-year history in that. So same type of pay, same line of work, you're not going to have an issue. If you switch from working for someone else to self-employed, it's probably going to be an issue and necessitate a waiting period. If you have a big change from career. So I've had people that, hey, I'm in sales, I sell office equipment, and then they go to selling some other type of product to the same audience. Not a big deal. But if you go from selling office equipment to selling cars, we don't really have a history of that showing that you have a skill set for that. So we would probably need that 2-year average of your commission of selling cars.
All right. I got a good question from Toby. So prepping my old house for sale, planning to list it in 30 days. Already live in a new house, so not in a hurry. How long should I take offers before accepting? 2 weeks? I think 2 weeks is excessive. Depending on the market that you're in, that could equate to, hell, hundreds of offers in some cases. But, I think, we've seen it. Not personally, but the stories of the Sacramento, where there was, 120 offers or something on a property, and in Washington, D.C., there was 90 offers on a property. It's crazy. But I think, after 4 or 5 days on the market, you should get a pretty good idea of what the market's willing to bear. So I think listing on a Wednesday or Thursday, and giving through Sunday, giving people through maybe Monday morning to make offers is enough time. I think 2 weeks is a lot, personally, but go with what your real estate agent says. Maybe in your market, that's the norm. I think, most California people list on Thursday or Friday. They review offers on Sunday. I think that's, especially in the market that we're in now with the amount of demand that we have, people know that they need to move quickly. They need to if they're wanting to make an offer, they need to do it, sooner rather than later. So I think that's plenty of time. But again, trust the professional you're hiring to do it, and they should be able to guide you in the right direction.
The comment that I made of the show I was watching on HGTV last night, that about the value you get back on a kitchen. They got to the end of the show, and it's that one unsellable homes. They take ugly homes and then they come and they put up the money to improve them and put it back on the market. The one last night, they had 72 offers on, and it was interesting. And granted, it's for the TV show. This is not really when they're sitting down with the sellers and going through it, but they had the agents had to go through all 72, put them into a spreadsheet, and in reality, they sorted them out by whatever criteria was important to them and to the seller, and they looked at 5 offers. So once you get past a certain point, by 30, by 35 offers, they had 3, 4, or 5 good ones there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just listed a property again last week, and we listed it on a Tuesday, and by Thursday we had 1 offer. And my client, we had showing scheduled for Friday afternoon, Saturday, and Sunday, and it was a strong offer. My client decided to accept it on Friday before going through the weekend, because it was exactly what she wanted in the offer, and accepted it, even with additional showings coming. And as a professional, I called those agents and told them, hey, look, this is what's going on. Kind of too good to refuse. My client decided to accept it. If you don't want to view the property, I understand, so on and so forth. One client still wanted to see it, and made a backup offer at the listing price as well. So there was a backup offer, all cash, 7-day close on that one, or 14-day close, 7-day inspection contingency. But it's strong offer, right? I mean, it really depends on what, some sellers out there want to milk every dollar, want to get highest and best. And some are saying, hey, look, this is what I asked. This is exactly what I wanted. I'm willing to take it now. So you're going to get, a little bit of both out there. But do what you feel is right. I just saw a good question here. So Sarab,
I think you got it.
Sarab Garg, thanks for your video on the appraisal below offer price. So I did a video earlier today talking about the appraisal gap. It's a new word, right? I don't know that appraisal gap was ever 2 words tied together until this market, but it is now common verbiage that we hear all the time. So I talked about it. And he's asking, the home appraised $100,000 below the asking price, but he's doing an 80% loan to value. Do I need to pay all 100,000 or the 80K because he's financing 80% of the value of the home? Josh, why don't you touch on that? Because I think this is a good question.
You're going to pay the entire shortage, but you're going to save some money on your down payment. Not much. So you're kind of right with the math here. That $100,000 coming off the purchase price, you're going to save the $20,000 down payment off of that. But you're going to have to pay that whole $100,000 gap. So in essence, what the lender does is they're taking the lesser of the appraised value or the sale price. So now we're operating off of, we're putting 20% down off of the low appraised value, and that's your new loan. And then we have to say the difference that you're coming up with is not the down payment. It's not the difference between the appraised value and the loan. It's the difference between the sale price and the loan. And that difference, that appraisal gap, is $100,000. So you're bringing in your down payment plus the $100,000 shortage and your closing costs and prepaids.
Very good. Good explanation there. I wasn't going to explain it that clearly. So that's.
Do you want to circle back to our first question that they stumped the joke man with on crypto?
We can either end with it or you can touch it now. Touch on it now. So let's go back up. I'll throw the question. You want to touch on it now?
Yep. So the short answer, and this is my number one resource when there's tricky stuff, they've done the research. They've called Fannie, Freddie, FHA, VA, and USDA and gone through this. None of them have a written policy on that. Fannie Mae verbally confirmed that crypto funds are not considered ineligible funds. So meaning they are eligible funds provided the lender documents a paper trail. So what do we need to do? We have to document ownership of the crypto. We have to evidence that the borrowers owned it for at least 2 months. We have to document that the crypto purchase was not purchased by credit card or any type of borrowed or finance, and it was the borrower's own cash investment. Paper trail the sale of the crypto, then subsequent deposit into the borrower's personal account. Now, for the question that we had at the beginning, they were asking to use it for reserves. We wouldn't have to sell it. We would have to show it. So from there, if we can exclude them, if you own assets in crypto that we don't need for closing, we can obviously exclude them. So that's Fannie Freddie. FHA also has no guidance on crypto, but the FHA Homeownership Center answered the question and said that they stated that crypto is not a formally regulated currency, stock, or bond. However, if you liquidate the funds, put them into your bank account for 60 days, they would be eligible borrower funds as reflected in the 60-day average balance. So FHA and VA, you're probably going to have to liquidate them, put them into your personal account in liquid form, which based off of it being 50% lower than what it was a month ago, probably not going to be happy about that. Fannie, Freddie indicate you can use it. USDA has no policy, and the only thing it says here, the lender will likely want documentation that converts the currency's value to dollar amount before closing. So if you're planning on using crypto, the big question is get ahead of it and let your lender know that, and make sure they know how to get a firm answer from underwriting that what you want to do with the funds is going to work for either reserves or for your down payment.
There you go. And actually, it's been on my list to do a video about this. So I will take all of Josh's information and explain it in slower, easier to understand terms and give you some examples of it here over the next couple of days.
We'll let the audience be the judge of that, Jeb, as to who's clearer.
That was fast, bro. You said it fast. I'm going to slow it down. I'm going to make a 10-minute video out of that 30 seconds that you just did there. I'm kidding. But I'm not really. Let's see here. So I am misread. I am purchasing my first home, and a week before we were set to close, my lender pulled the plug. So now I'm going through an FHA loan, and it seems like more money. So I guess the first question is, why did your lender pull the plug? And why are you having to change the types of loans, right? More of a statement than a comment, but than a question, but.
And Jeb, the answer to that is FHA is more lenient in any number of ways. They'll
Right.
allow a higher debt to income ratio. They'll allow a lower credit score. You can sometimes get a better combination of interest rate and mortgage insurance that would lead to a lower payment. So there's any number of reasons. It's not uncommon, but it shouldn't be coming up a week before closing. Our goal is always within 1 week of the file being opened, having a full underwriting decision so we know any questions the underwriter has. Usually that's within 3 days of opening, so that I'm not perfect. My loan partners are not perfect. Occasionally you'll overlook or miss something. So that's why we want it in front of an underwriter as soon as possible. 99.9% of the time they see it the same way we do, but it shouldn't be coming up a week before closing. The last part of her question says, seems like more money. It shouldn't seem like more money. The closing costs are not going to change. The interest rate should be more aggressive on the FHA loan. So if you're willing to go up in rate a little bit, which would still be better than a conventional loan, you're going to get a big lender credit. So as an example, we have a client, another viewer from the channel here, that's looking to buy a $500,000 house, and they didn't have enough money for their down payment and closing costs. So our initial thought was we go FHA. FHA for them was 2.875 with a 2-point lender credit. So we were getting them close to $10,000 credit for taking 2.875 versus 2.25 if they needed no credit. Well, their credit scores are really good. They came up with a little bit more money than they thought, and we looked at it and said, maybe we go conventional. And the conventional was 3.25 to get a 1.5% lender credit. So it still worked out. They had enough money to get it closed. They were only doing a 3% down instead of 3.5. So it's sort of the reverse. We started with an FHA and went to a conventional, but other things being equal, FHA gives you a lot of flexibility, and the cost should be really similar. If you were doing a 3% conventional, now you're 3.5% down FHA. So depending on the purchase price, that 0.5% can make a difference. But again, what I'm kind of hearing here, if I were to guess, we looked there in the Optimal Blue Index, showing that the nationwide average for lenders right now is 3.25 on an FHA, and I'm telling you the rate's 2.25 for a well-qualified borrower. She's probably with a direct lender that's charging her the same rate on the FHA as they were on the conventional, versus getting you a lower interest rate. So since you're essentially starting over, a lender that already has the file obviously could close quicker than someone starting absolutely from scratch, but I would talk to another lender. You shouldn't be looking at significantly higher closing costs on an FHA loan. The biggest difference that you would have would be there's an upfront mortgage insurance premium on the FHA that you didn't have on the conventional. It's financed, you don't pay it out of pocket, but it is a cost that eventually when you sell that home, you'll pay back that finance mortgage insurance.
All right. So I'm going to hammer out a couple quick questions here at the end. We're almost at 2 hours, but we're going to nail Try to get like 3 or 4 here. So, Shalgenia. Yeah,
I'm going with Sojanya.
dude, you made it sound too good. I like Shalgenia. I bought a house on my name as a primary resident. My husband is on title, but not on the loan. Can he buy a new home as a primary, Josh?
So he's on title, he owns that property, but he's not obligated on the loan. So we would need an explanation to the lender if we're trying to exclude the payment on your home as to why he is not going to be making that payment. Are we getting divorced? Are we just going to live in separate residences? As crazy as it may be to believe, I've had a client go, yeah, you know what? We're not getting divorced. We like each other. We just don't want to live together anymore. So on a conventional loan, we don't have to hit spousal debt even in community property states. So he's not obligated on the loan as long as he has a reasonable explanation that he would put in writing to an underwriter as to why he's buying a home on his own. He can absolutely buy the primary, assuming he qualifies on his own and doesn't need you on it as well. Now, there's nothing preventing the both of you from going and buying another primary. If you have a departing residence that you own and you're going to rent it, rents can offset that payment and the two of you can qualify for the new home. But it sounds like you've got multiple options that would work for you.
All right. Jimmy Orozco, inflation data coming out tomorrow morning. Can the results affect the housing market? I think the housing market as a whole, no. It's going to take months and months and months of bad inflation data to really affect the housing market. In the short term, the only thing it might affect is interest rates. But even then, I think you're probably pretty good at the moment. Question from Elsa. Josh, can a lender go to underwriting without our approval to sign with them?
They shouldn't. We talked about this in one of the questions earlier. For us to get released into underwriting, we have to have you sign our initial disclosures, and one of those disclosures is a notice of intent to proceed. They are supposed to get that before it goes to underwriting. So I think you're worried about something that you don't need to be worried about. Let's say that I skipped that step, shot it into underwriting, and called you back and said, hey, great news, Elsa, we got you approved. The answer would be, so what? I didn't say I'm working with you. You don't have my notice of intent to proceed. That's great that you underwrote the loan and took time, effort, and energy to do so. I haven't decided to go with you. So there's no downside or harm in them having underwritten your loan. Assuming that you gave them a credit authorization and they pulled the credit, that's the only thing that impacts you. And again, that's an overblown concern that most buyers have, as you know, any credit inquiries for a mortgage within 45 days are treated as a single inquiry. So I think you're worried about something that would never be a concern. They could do it, but they shouldn't do it. And if they did, it wouldn't really impact you negatively.
All right, we're going to do 2 more questions here, and we're going to get out. We've been on this thing 2 hours. Ross did a super chat. Should I sell my house for $150K profit and move? Move to where?
And move and do what?
Yeah, I mean, you got to have a plan, right? I mean, just because you have $150,000 in profit doesn't mean you should sell your property. You know, it's one of those, you're buying at the top. I mean, you're selling at the top, you're buying at the top. And I'm not using the top as saying the top of the market, but just use it as a reference. You know, whatever it is, if you're selling now and you're buying now, it's the same thing. But you need to have a plan on what you plan on doing. But thank you for the super chat. And Sadie, why do sellers care about down payments? I have plenty of money, but would rather conserve my capital. Yeah. So a lot of investors want to, or buyers want to leverage, want to use, the bank's money, if they will, because the low interest rate, it's basically free in many ways. But the seller cares because it looks like you're more qualified when you have a larger down payment. If you're one of those people, I mean, you mentioned you have plenty of money, have your agent show the other side. Like, listen, my client has this amount of money in the bank. They're choosing to go with this type of loan because they're trying to conserve capital, because they're trying to leverage. They're in a position where they could pay more, have the lender call and say the exact same thing, and just convey how strong you are. Being able to back it up with proof of the down payment could help. But typically speaking, when people put lesser down payments, it's because they don't have the capital. But if you can show it, you're probably in a good position. So we're going to end it there. Josh, you want to add on the contact information? Any last departing words you want to add there? We can do that as well. I'll throw our information up. There you go. Appreciate you guys watching. 206 of you on at the moment. If you haven't already, I would appreciate if you find the content valuable to hit that thumbs up. It helps more people see it. Helps Josh and I accomplish the goals of educating, empowering, and guiding home buyers through the real estate mortgage process. But Josh, final words, anything you want to add?
Just, I always fall back on both real estate and mortgage truly is experts are the exception rather than the rule. A lot of the questions we get, the things of, hey, we're a week from closing and we're having to change our loan type, or hey, my agent screwed this up and now I'm in trouble and stuck on this property. They can be avoided by working with an expert. So we realize we got people from all around the country. Jeb only sells homes pretty much in Orange County. I only do home loans in California. So even if we could help all of you, we can't. But we can connect you with experts around the country. So if you don't have an expert, if you don't have someone that you know does a volume of business, is very good at it, is very conscientious about staying on top of guidelines, cares about their clients, and wants to do a good job for them, reach out to us. Let us get you connected with someone, because most of the headaches and heartaches that we hear about from people through the channel and in person can absolutely be avoided just by getting with the right person up front and not going down the path of least resistance. There is no easy button. There's no push button, get mortgage. There's no push button, find amazing realtor. It's just marketing speak. Get with an expert and get taken care of.
I have nothing more to say. That is exactly, we're going to end there. Appreciate you guys watching. We'll be back next Wednesday. If you have any questions after watching this, put them in the comments and we will answer them later. Talk to you guys soon. Adios.